Hey there. If you've been following us, you know that we've been studying in Exodus. It was a while before I realized that this chapter of the Bible is named this because of the Israelites exiting Egypt. I wanted to tell you that God certainly inspired the Hebrews to be unbelievably accurate record keepers of his word. Rabbinical scribes would use a numbering system when they were copying to the Torah. Each character has a number value, and the scribes would use those numbers to add the page vertically and then horizontally. And if the numbers did not add up to the exact correct sum, they tore up the page and began again. So we can trust what the Bible says. The scrolls that have been found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's hardly ever a word, a tittle of difference in the Torah. In our previous studies, we've studied the Egyptian culture, and to place ourselves in the setting, the ancient setting of Egypt, you would have been in an Egyptian grandeur, would be maybe the best way to put it. The streets are bustling. It's filled with towering, opulent temples dedicated to the gods. There's a background of pyramids in various stages of completion as a constant reminder of the importance, power, and authority of the pharaohs. The Bible relates a showdown where the gods of Egypt are met with the one true God and his power above and over all. It is important to remember that the 10 plagues that befall Egypt were not just a series of catastrophes. They were a strategic assault on the very deities worshipped by the Egyptians. And I am sorry to say, also by the Israelites, God's own chosen people. I was always baffled at the plagues that God chose to bring against Egypt. Why frogs? Why flies? Why darkness? You may be surprised to find out that these plagues were in no way random. They were specifically targeted, as we will see as we go through the scriptures. Excuse me. So here we have Happy, the Egyptian god of the Nile. This Egyptian god was a water bearer. He was revered. The Nile was revered as the lifeline of Egypt. And the plague of Egypt was that it was transformed into blood, mocking Hapi, the god of the Nile. The magicians were able to copy this in some form, but they couldn't reverse the process. Only the one true God could do that. And of course, Pharaoh wasn't that impressed. He didn't let him go. This next slide is showing Heket, the Egyptian goddess of fertility, water, renewal. She had the head of a frog. So what is the next plague? Frogs, which were a symbol of fertility and resurrection to the Egyptians, but not when they flooded the lands. This is a challenge to Heket, the frog-headed goddess. The Bible tells us that the Pharaoh's magicians were actually able to bring more frogs in their attempt to imitate the power of God, but only Moses was able to make the frogs go away. Here we have Geb. Geb was the Egyptian god of the earth. He was over the dust of the earth. From that dust, God brought lice. The magicians are finally completely humiliated since they can't produce this effect at all. They even commented, this is the finger of God. Hepri, murder in these names. Egyptian god of creation, movement of the sun and rebirth. He is depicted with the head of a fly or a scarab beetle. He was humbled as swarms of gnats and flies invaded the once divine spaces, tainting their sanctity. Hathor. We've talked about this in previous studies. I think someone commented this is the first cowgirl, but Hathor was the Egyptian goddess of love and protection, usually depicted with the head of a cow. The corresponding plague began with a warning. If Pharaoh didn't let God's people go, all the cattle and livestock of the Egyptians would incur pestilence and disease, causing them to die. The Hebrews' cattle and livestock would be spared without harm. So we're getting pretty serious with these plagues. You would think that Pharaoh would let the people go, but it's not happening. Isis, the Egyptian goddess of medicine and peace. The Egyptian plague, ashes turned to boils and sores. Unannounced, the sixth Egyptian plague is given for the first time, directly attacking the Egyptian people. Being instructed by the Lord, Moses took the dust from the ashes in the furnace and threw them into the air. As they settled on man and beast alike in the form, boils and sores formed on them. Knut, the Egyptian goddess of the sky, she had hail rain down in the form of fire and ice. So for all her, you see her little arches here, for all of that protection that she was supposed to be given, that didn't happen. One of the scariest things to me, not so much scary, it's shocking, that when I'm looking for these reference photos to try to give you some visuals, I came across a lot for these gods and goddesses. But come to find out, those are not ancient artifacts in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Here you see two things that are sold on Etsy and eBay that are tiles to put on your backsplash, or something to put on your desk. And I don't know, some of these things look like they are have been designed for worship, and they are obviously in great demand. Most of them are made of precious metals and stones and go for 250 and up. People are buying these and left and right today. It's just so shocking. Seth was the Egyptian god of storms and disorder. The Egyptian plague associated with this god, little g god, was locusts sent from the sky. They would have eaten the crops. They would have just destroyed a lot of the livelihood that the Egyptians would have had for their grain and their wheat and what have you. What the hail didn't destroy, what the, fire and ice didn't take care of. I guess it's on the ground now. Their locusts are eating it. Ra was a sun god. He was actually considered one of the most powerful gods. A lot of the other gods were daughters or sons of Ra. And I think you probably have anybody that's done any studying at all about history knows how much the people worshipped the sun and the movement of the sun and the power of the sun. And he was the sun god, Ra. But the Egyptian plague was 3 days of complete darkness. 3 days of what is considered palpable darkness. That means it was so immense and so dark that it could be felt. I can't really imagine what that is, but I imagine that it was not just a physical darkness, but a spiritual darkness as well. It's important to know, though, that the Hebrews actually, the Bible says, had light in their homes during those 3 days of darkness. And that brings me to children of the light. We are children of the light. And I've written some scriptures here to Um, won't read all of them for you, but God said, "Let there be light" in Genesis. That was the very beginning. And yeah, the psalmist eventually, for with you is the fountain of life. In your light, we see light. Uh, That's light. Um, you can go through these on your own sometime. These are some in John, lot about 16 times, I think, in the book of John, he talks about the light, and Jesus said he was the light of the world. There's even a warning. Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. So there are warnings about light as well. But we are children of the light, and there is no darkness in us. We do not belong to the night or the darkness. Then light, darkness, sin, forgiveness. Here are some more that are important. Next week, the 10th plague and the final plague. And everything's been building up to this. And so many times when um, these plagues would seem more than they could bear, and that the Pharaoh would let them go. He'd let them go, change his mind. He'd say he was going to let them go. He even tried to get them to go without the livestock. He tried to get them to go without the women and children, just the men go. And Moses would not give in. It was everybody was leaving. Everybody's leaving, and they're not coming back. And so it actually says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart for several of these plagues, and that he wouldn't let the people go. I looked up that word in the Greek and Hebrew. This would be the Hebrew. And it actually says that word hardened, it means hardened, but it means he strengthened Pharaoh. So God actually orchestrated Pharaoh saying no. He orchestrated all that so that um, he could show his power and his glory. He could be glorified. So there you have it. So when we get to the 10th plague, we're going to have a lot to unpack. See you next time.